Hey guys, welcome to Coffee Fixation. It's been a while since the last episode, so we'll try to set up this today this way. Looks alright. So welcome. Today we're hosting David Train, so we're very excited to get another guest in. Brew Shark, hey, Mugs, Coffee, Jing, and all of the people joining in. Thank you for tuning in. It's good to see you all. It's been a while. It's been a few days. We're at the agency. We're trying to get back into a regular schedule, so we'll have to try to work out the podcast and the episodes to come on how we're gonna make it happen. We're waiting on David Train, so hopefully he's online. I sent him a message, and we'll wait on him until he pops up, and we'll have standard show. Lots of questions, and you're able to ask, of course, question yourself. And speaking of the man, here he is. Let's bring him on. Hi from Bangkok. Good to see you. Mr. David,
How's it going, mate?
finally we meet.
So I literally just got in the house. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
That's why. I can hear you fantastic. You look great. How you doing? Spinning. I got you. How you doing, my man?
Yeah, really, really good actually. Just came back from a nice little holiday, which is really nice. How are you?
Good. Unusual day. Obviously, with the reopening and everything, I had more of a normal day. I had a few meetings in the city and sat down at a cafe. Big shout out to the boys from Vacation Coffee. We were there for coffee and normal, kinda. But
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to reshape normal.
Yeah, I was also in had a quick few meetings as well, and it was nice to drink an espresso in a cup in a cafe, which was really, really nice. And that was a really nice place called Karma and Crow here in Adelaide. So it was good.
Very nice. Very nice. Very well. First things first. How's things with COVID where you are and for you and your family? Everyone good?
Yeah, actually, it's been obviously a strange scenario, and my immediate family, we're all kind of all over the place in Australia, in Scotland, in Ireland, in London. So we're kind of used to being separated. So that hasn't been too hard in sort of that aspect. Obviously not being able to go see each other has been a bit of a pain, but I mean, we're all healthy. We're all still luckily employed. My family's as good as, can be expected, which is nice.
Well, that's the number one opinion. So fantastic to hear that. Now, I think you've seen a few episodes. You know already what's expecting on your way.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead. We can talk about whatever you want.
How did you start your coffee journey?
How did I start my coffee journey? Well, back when I started, coffee really wasn't a career. Definitely not like today. So I started in Sydney in 2006. My father decided for his midlife crisis to buy a cafe in St Ives in Sydney, and had no idea how to run it. I just finished high school. I was about to join the military, and kind of just helped him washing dishes. And then after a while, it's cliche, waiter, running tables, learn how to make coffee. And then was 2 years after that, kind of, he sold it, and I was like, shit, what do I do? And then it's kind of been in it ever since.
You stuck with it. And I suppose that, starting from there, it gave you a great perspective, like you said, midlife crisis. I mean, I think lots of people open cafes for that, and instead that was your career launch, which is fantastic. And could you kindly give the audience and people going to rewatch this a summary of all the competition you took part and coffee jobs and projects that are relevant that you've been involved in? A few.
Well,
The ones that you want. You pick your favorites.
well, yeah, I guess like as my dad said, actually, the one good thing about his cafe was it kind of gave me a career. As he figured out, it was it's really hard work owning a cafe. So yeah, I was baristering in Sydney for a few years. Moved to London, was baristering again. Was a cocktail bartender for a few years in London, and then in 2013 moved to Germany. Got a job at a really small roaster in the middle of nowhere in Germany. And that was kind of because I'd already been, I don't know, I had this Australian barista skill. And in Europe in 2000, this is 2009 to 2013. So in Europe, the coffee scene was definitely nothing like it is now. And then from there was a training manager for a roaster in the UK, and then was sort of a head barista manager at Man vs. Machine in Munich. And then in 2017 decided to come home. Flew to Melbourne, had a job interview with Code Black, got the job. Stayed there for 2 years, and then for the past 16 months I've been working as a coffee importer. And my competition sort of career, I guess you would say, started really just before leaving Munich. I did like a barista jam thing. It was quite a fun thing. It was like a coffee making competition.
Yeah.
Like make 8 lattes in 10 minutes or whatever it was. And then I started actual, I guess, proper competition end of 2017 in the Brewers Cup, and then have been doing Brewers Cup ever since. So this is technically, I guess, my 3rd year of competing. Wow,
that's a fair bit of competition. Then don't be shy. You won the latest 2020 Brewers region.
Southern region. So I the first time I competed, I came 3rd. The second time I competed, I came 2nd, and the last time I competed, I came 1st in the southern region, which was really nice. So yeah, it was a surprise, and it's a lot of hard work. But yeah, obviously nationals hasn't happened or won't happen or
hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet. So yeah. So I'd be happy if competition stopped right now, actually, with what I achieved.
That's good. And there was actually someone that asked a question into my stories, and I was trying to bring it up, but the story disappeared, so therefore it's gone. So I can't remember the username, but someone asked, what motivated you to move on from Code Black? Which is a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned it.
The first time I ever saw unroasted coffee, so green coffee, I was instantly fascinated with that product. And at this stage, I'd been making coffee, and this is probably going to hurt a few people's feelings, but I'd been making coffee for many years, and making coffee was never really my passion. I really cared about the people I was working with, or my customers, or whatever. And then when I knew that there was this complete other side of coffee, this whole green coffee world, which existed obviously overseas, etc. I knew that I really wanted to kind of pursue the path in green. And when the role with Langdon's came up, I applied for the job, and I'd done a fair bit of I'd done it's not very common in Australia, but my SCAE or SCA green bean and sensory analysis training modules, and some organic acid classes, etc. So a lot of things that were geared more towards sensory and green grading, etc. So my fascination had always been to kind of work in that field, or in the field I'm in now.
Gotcha. Which it caters perfectly for the next question, which is, we all love coffee. It's delicious, but it wouldn't be possible without the people and the community around us. So, from origin to roasters, that's probably your chapter, but also from barista to consumers. I think that we often forget this element. and I think that the pandemic has woke up a little bit of people on, hey, we've forgotten about the people. Could this element combined with the overall experience, across the chain, become an element to save the industry?
I mean, I'd hope so. People always say like they're in this industry for people. Like you have to be, and I've always cared infinitely more about the people I was either serving coffee to. Like I obviously wanted to give them the best beverage that I could possibly give, but I cared more about who they were, what they were doing, how their day was, how their wife and kids were, etc. And then same with my role now is I care infinitely more about either the people that I'm helping supply coffee to, or the people that we're buying coffee from. And I'm thinking what's happening right now will just kind of showcase people that the supply chain is massive, and what affects your local cafe affects a coffee picker in Colombia. So I hope the outcome of all this will be more awareness into just the whole supply chain and how it all affects each other.
And help the people watching and who are going to watch again or listen to the podcast. What exactly do you do, and what do you love about what you do?
Essentially, I help coffee roasters find green coffee. I sell to roasters kind of all over Australia, and help facilitate their needs, I guess, their wants, or whatever they're looking for. And generally, what I love about it is I supply a really broad range of roasters with wildly different philosophies, and it's actually really humbling to meet all these people who have such different opinions on coffee, and I get to sort of learn their approach and to why they do it. And when you work for a roaster, you can get a little pigeonholed in your opinion on coffee and what's good coffee and what's bad coffee, etc. And kind of when you work in green and you're dealing with so many different roasters and they buy coffee from other importers and they have great coffee as well, you end up, I think, getting more of an appreciation for just sort of all approaches and all theories and all styles in terms of roasting and buying. So it's that's actually been something that I've really, really enjoyed.
And is it, I'm assuming it's almost, the green is kind of your baby, right? Has it happened to you? Like, is it difficult sometimes where you're not necessarily, like, is it difficult, has it ever happened perhaps where you weren't necessarily happy with, like, how does it work in terms of quality control?
Yeah, so we have an amazing girl called Bo who runs our actual quality control lab. So obviously we get sent samples from exporters or producers, or we get them ourselves, and we'll obviously cut them. We grade them out of 100s, give them a score accordingly, and obviously we'll say yes or no essentially to these coffees, and then when those coffees are then commercially milled, we'll be sent what's called a PSS, so another sample, and it's kind of like another way that we can either continue to purchase these coffees, or maybe something's gone wrong and we might not be able to take them. And then once again, when they land, we then take a landed sample and do the whole thing again. And it doesn't always land the way you want it to.
Of course.
And then we have to deal with it. We once that coffee's left that country, that's our problem.
Yeah, I suppose what I was trying to say is, it's like you're providing an ingredient to the cook, to the chef, but the chef can still stuff up the ingredient. Like how is it difficult on a personal level? Like, that's just this pure curiosity. It's not part of the questions. It's more like, you don't have to answer it, but like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. There are some of the roasters that I know of or whatever. I maybe don't necessarily agree with their roasting style or their approach, but I'm not their customer. Cool. They have people that love what they do, and it's just maybe not. I mean, there's always a preference. And even when I worked for roasters, and we would buy coffees and roast them, not every single coffee was something that I personally enjoyed. They were good coffees, roasted as good as they could be, but they weren't necessarily for me. And I guess I don't actually feel too protective of the green because we don't grow it. You know, we're not the producer. We don't pick it. We don't mill it. We don't put it on the container. So it's not our coffee.
That paints it. Yeah, that right there. It makes a lot of sense for people going to watch, because I think, without thinking, you're the first green bean person on the show. Like, we had farmers, we had, like Joseph and all of them, but in terms of plainly being in between. So I think these are relevant questions for people to learn what you do and how you do and what's the process behind coffee, which is coffee. We give it for granted, but it's safe to say that it's underpriced, and it's probably something that you are on the front line, as far as you can literally witness this on a daily basis. Do you think, or at least give you the answer the question that I've asked other people, do you think that coffee should be treated more on a price level as beer and wine?
Oh, 100%. But it's a vicious cycle that's got so many complex layers. If we start charging cafes, if I'm a roaster, etc., if cafes start charging customers, $5 or $6 for a latte, which they should, how do we translate that extra cost, gets back to the people that are doing the hard work? And it's such a broad, multi-layered industry, where I do believe we should be treating it, and there are coffees out there that are treated this way, but they count for 1% to 2% of all the coffee out there. So having that appreciation, I think, would be great, but it's like, how do we start it, and who benefits from it?
Yeah, and it's such a sensitive topic, isn't it? Because it's like, I think this control within the cafe. Sorry, I can hear the echo. All right. I think there's control within the cafe in terms of the experience. If you charge more, you can provide a higher level of experience. I had this conversation with a guy that I had a meeting with today. And if the experience is a higher, like a fine dining experience, the consumer justify the cost.
Yep.
But how can you improve the experience between origin and roaster is the question, to justify a higher cost, because it's all about quality. What do you think? Do you have any idea in terms of what could it be the experience to be better? Because this is, I'm shooting in the dark here, because I never bought a single kilo of green beans.
Well, it's asking, I guess, your importer, or the producer, or whoever you're buying the coffee from, just more about it, and trying to understand their product. It is their product, not the importer, sorry, but the producer, etc. And trying to understand, how do you want to represent it? If you're a roaster, understanding that connection between, you are translating their product for a consumer. You're the voice to their product. And if you can, maybe if you have that option or the capability to communicate with them, or to people like myself, etc., to understand more about the product, to give it the appreciation that it does deserve. Not all coffees are easy to access this information. Very large, kind of commercial grade coffees that are, from huge areas of different countries, you can't find that kind of level of information. But a lot of the coffees that we do buy in Australia are really well grown, ethically traded, etc. So trying to find the right questions and the right answers to give your end consumer, as a roaster or a cafe, a better appreciation for that product.
And I think there's a few roasters that do justice to that, as far as tasting cards and showcasing, even putting out there what they paid for the coffee. And I think it can work. It's just not enough at the moment, I suppose. What we have back in my country, for instance, for certain industries, we got capped prices and capped industry regulated pricing and rules. For instance, within the same amount of square meters, you can't have more than 3 pizza shops. So then if you're pizza shop number 4, you gotta wait until one of the 3 shut the business, or you gotta move to another location. Would you say that perhaps if the industry was regulated as far as pricing goes for between roaster and cafe, could be, you know, and not one price. It will be a range from XYZ all the way to ABC. But at least then the cafe owner would have to be charged a little bit more already for it.
I think it would be a fantastic idea, but the issue, I guess, is that people will still trying to be capitalizing on making money, and someone will be there in the middle. And it happens in every industry. There are people that are always trying to, and there's nothing wrong with making money. It's, you know, it's the way the world works. But there will be people probably trying to manipulate that. And you know, if we could try and, so if you have like the FNC in Colombia, you know, they try and regulate the cost of Colombian coffee, but the cost of, you know, coffee is based off the Brazilian market, or, you know, production. So we can't really control that kind of cost. So for us as an importer or importers, we can say, you know, coffee is always going to be this price for this quality. If we can somehow agree, we can't necessarily get that insurance from, you know, the countries that we're buying coffee from. So if we can have roasters coming together, they can all sit around a round table and have a conversation about maybe, and I know some roasters do have these conversations together about, you know, maybe their client base and what they want to charge, etc. But yeah, I think it'd be a great idea as long as no one ruins it.
Yeah, and big shout out to Nicola Nasso. I think you and I know both these gentlemen, Nick.
Nick, yes.
Good to see you here, Nick. Yeah, I think it will be interesting because in my time working for a cafe roaster, I've seen specialty grade coffee going from $16 plus equipment plus cash contribution all the way to $42 a kilo, no chance to negotiate. That's a huge gap.
That's a very big gap.
This is in Melbourne. We're not talking about weird places in the world. The so-called coffee capital.
Roasted wholesale in Melbourne is a very competitive market where roasters are willing to give whatever they want to give or whatever they can afford to give. I'm kind of happy I'm not in that boat.
Yeah, but wouldn't then the idea that certain countries have with around different products, like in Italy, like I mentioned, for Nick, who just tuned in, there's some industries where certain products are capped price. There's a minimum, there's a maximum. You can't go. Wouldn't that push roasters to then improve their quality, improve their packaging, improve their service? Because all of a sudden it's like, shit, I got, you know, I got no longer that average of throwing the sink and really reduce that price, and then having all of that shamozzle. It's like, oh, I gotta cook better. I gotta improve my service. I gotta really look after my customers, and then the people doing a good job are gonna shine.
I think it would be. I would absolutely love for something like this to happen in our country, to be able to have some sort of regulation in terms of costing and pricing, and it keeps a competitive market for everyone, and therefore you are buying the product based on quality and not on what I've been promised. And it's kind of, I guess, on my side of the fence of an importer is, you know, roasters are buying a product for a certain level of quality and price, etc., and that's fantastic. You know, if they have a different coffee from a different importer that is a better quality, then fantastic. You know, I can't do anything about that. If roasters could get a chance to just focus on that aspect instead of obviously giving them the kitchen sink, as you said, I think it would make them all maybe slightly more quality driven.
Which brings me to the other side of the fence, which is there should be also a regulation around how many cafes per street, per square, like, I think that would then go hand in hand, because the reason why we got to the point of having such stupidly low coffee prices, where I spoke about it with Alberto from Tostato in Italy, and he was telling me what he paid, what Italian cafes pay for commercial coffee, and I'm like, that's like double than some prices I've seen for specialty coffee in Australia. It's crazy. It's because it's so competitive and there's so many other coffee shops. Then, you know, I'm forced as the new kid on the block to just really cut down my costs. So then I'm going to go with you, who's going to give me the famous kitchen sink. So I think it's very unregulated, surprisingly.
Yes, you know, the cafe industry in Australia is pretty flooded. You know, it is. There are so many coffee shops, and it's not a coffee industry issue. It's an industry issue that I've faced in all the countries I've lived and worked in. It's you know, I don't want to badmouth people, but it's people that have, let's say, an office job that see cafes busy all the time. They're like, oh, I want to open a coffee shop, and they have a bit of money. They open a coffee shop. They've never worked in a coffee shop, and they have one, and they've opened up next to another one, which is quite successful, and that takes a few kilos a week, etc., away from someone else. And then someone else sees, oh, there's now 2 cafes, you know, here. I'm going to open up another one, and it has unfortunately bred this vicious cycle of it does say that we have this vicious cycle of so many cafes, and then obviously, how do we cut costs? You know, how do I make my cafe more profitable? How do I make my roastery more profitable? Yeah, it has been a pretty crazy trend here in Australia.
And look,
said oversaturated. Yes,
100%. And look, I'm going to drop a heavy bomb, and if people don't like it, then they can just tune away. That's not a problem. I also think that a large percentage of those players who thought diversifying or listening to a broker selling the dream to have your own cafe, you know, what you just said, I think a lot of those people, because of something that nobody talks about, COVID-19 will make shut businesses. And I agree that it's also because of the virus, but I also think the following. I think it's a great way to walk out. Why? On a human level, if I tell my parents, hey, I just left my 6-digit figure income, I'm gonna open a cafe, and they are against it, or my wife or my friends, and for months and years I struggle, and I just keep getting, you know, credits, loans, and try really to make it work and just stay above the water. A lot of those businesses that didn't shut down because of fear of judgment, because of their own insecurity, because they didn't want to look as a failure and get someone told them, I told you, you couldn't open up a cafe. When COVID instead kicks in, I'm not saying it's a ticket, it's an exit ticket, but some of those people, it will be an exit ticket, because then they're gonna feel sorry for me that I got hit by a pandemic, and yet I was just doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 kilos of coffee, and the business wasn't viable in the first place.
I think I agree. I mean, and there's no shame in not having a successful cafe. I mean, there's unfortunately hundreds of them in the country. It's not for everyone, and not every cafe can be successful. You know, not every pizza shop will be successful, not every bar, or, you know, it's just unfortunately not going to happen. And there's no, you know, my father had one, he did okay. I think he sold it at a very small profit. He would never do it again. And I haven't opened a cafe. I haven't said I won't, but I haven't opened one in 13 years, because I understood how hard it was, or is, to run. So.
And going back on regulation, and then, you know, we can move on, but it's like, I could not become a commercial electrician, plumber, dentist, doctor from tomorrow. There is a process, there is a license, there is a process that at least they're gonna teach you the basics of, like, okay, I'm gonna be able to do A, B, C, and D, then I'll build up my experience. So I've seen too many shops with the job that I used to do where it was a chiro, an accountant, a banker, insurer, you name it. But it's like if I open up a pizza shop, I have no idea. I have experience in hospitality, and I still think that people who don't know how to make the core product of a restaurant or a cafe shouldn't open it, because how can you run it if you don't know how to cook or how to make coffee? It's almost a guarantee that you're setting up yourself for troubles, because guess what? Even if you have 10 years experience, you can still fail. But if you go, if you go zero,
yeah.
fuck.
I couldn't agree more. I've said this many times over the years with people that I've met. Stay in your job, buy a GS3 or a Linear Mini and an EK43 and make fantastic coffee at home. Or if we could just have some form of traineeship. I have an amazing friend of mine, Vu, who works in Melbourne, who left his IT engineering job, really wanted to open a cafe, but really, really wanted to learn the ins and outs. And he left his job in Brisbane, moved to Melbourne, and he's still trying to learn everything, and he's been doing it for 4 years now. So when he does open his own place, he will hopefully have a foundation to make it successful. And if we could have that regular, it would be the greatest thing in the world.
And before we read Barista Shane, which is tied it all up, I mean, going back on the plumbers and the tradies, you go your apprenticeship, go and work in a cafe and try. I mean, Colin Hammond's story, I think it's perfect for the people who know that. It's like he dedicated a whole year to learn about coffee, and then he gave it a shot, starting small. And for people who are going to listen to the podcast, they can read the comments. Barista Shane saying, if you want to open a McDonald's franchise, the owner needs to have been a manager for a number of years. Even that, it's regulated. There you go.
McDonald's is amazing. I worked there for 5 years as a teenager. I think it was
at least there you go. We hit the halfway mark. Hopefully you're prepared for this question because you've seen some of this. Out of the box question, if you could, who would you like to have dinner with?
Who would I like to have dinner with? Probably. Right now, I'd love to have dinner with my old man because I'd love to see him. It's been a few months. He's not going to watch this. It's all right. But I'm a massive Tottenham Hotspur fan in English Premier League, English football. So probably Harry Kane, who's the England captain. Just because I'd be a bit of a fanboy. There's probably him.
That's cool. I didn't know you were for Tottenham. That's Tottenham brings me bad memories from my soccer team, but that's okay.
Tottenham brings me bad memories because I've been supporting them my whole life, and we were really bad, and then we got really good, and then kind of failed a little bit. So it's been a roller. But
you have a good track history with Inter Milan, which is okay.
Yes, it is actually. It's been track history. So
far, actually, a great answer was from Hugh Kelly. Actually, he surprised me. He said, "It's easy. I want to have dinner with you, Mirko." I was like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming."
Hugh is like the most charming man that you'll ever meet. So he's.
You gotta get the charm to win the Barista Championship too. Hey. All right. Now, I still think it's relevant to dinner with Eriksson, Nicola.
Well, he's now from Spurs to Inter Milan. So there you go.
Now, I still think it's relevant with regulation, what we're just talking about. I still think that we shouldn't deter people who are really passionate about coffee to follow coffee as a career. What we were talking about was more in terms of regulation and be smart about it so that the industry will gain out of it rather than losing out of it and not having a oversaturated market and more successful business stories. Now, what would you tell to people who are stuck in that good job, or they're studying at uni, they're studying, marketing degree, but they found themselves on a part-time casual job into coffee, and they decide like, shit, I really like this. What's the best approach to say, F it. I'm not gonna listen to anybody else. What they're gonna tell me. I'm just gonna go for it, and I'm just going to be just doing coffee for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
What's the trick?
Listen to everyone, but make your own opinion. There's a lot of strong opinions in coffee. Some I agree with, some I don't. But I mean, I was quite lucky. I have been in the industry for a while, and I've met a lot of very influential people. And you know, I've always tried to kind of take as much information as I can from. And today we have such a good resource for it, and listen to what they all have to say, and see if it's applicable to what I'm doing. So, is this feasible, or can I do this in my cafe? You know, there's a lot of coffee shops that have a little bit more time to do certain things. It may not be feasible if you're in a high volume thing like that. And then also, like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's a cliche, but you know, the only way you learn is by doing. So if you haven't tried and you haven't failed, then you're not necessarily going to get a chance to learn. And taste as much coffee as you possibly can, to understand, and I mean, like, literally every day in your cafe, to understand how it interacts, etc. And then if you really want to make it a career, find out about the industry, what it is you like. You know, you don't have to be a cafe owner or a barista. You can be a sales rep for a roaster. You could create takeaway cups. You could be a machine tech. You could do food photography. There's a massive spectrum, and a lot of people go, I want to be a barista, I want to be a roaster, I want to be a green buyer. Maybe you don't want to pull 1,000 coffees a day. You don't want to do a production roasting facility where you're roasting a ton a day. Like, it's not for everyone. You need to understand what it is in the industry you like, you love, and focus your energy on that.
Thank you. If you follow a few of my episodes, I've been trying to scream that the spectrum is wide. It's about identify that passion of yours and combine it. Whether it's making martinis with AeroPresses whilst you're doing DJ set because you love music and coffee, and go super weird. It's like, and I always make soccer as a good example, football, but you know, they call it soccer here.
It's like football.
I know, but they call it soccer. Hey, it's like people think, oh, my passion is soccer. I gotta become the next Harry Kane. I gotta become the next Messi, Ronaldo. No, you can be commentator. You can be the speaker at the stadium. Then when your team scores, you can just cheer and do whatever you gotta do. You can sell T-shirts. You can sell jerseys. You can be a blogger. 442 on Instagram pop, and now they interview crazy people. You can start a podcast. You can start a YouTube channel. Like it's so vast, the things you can do. As long as you remember that passion at core is your basis, rather than focusing on money. Oh, well, but if I roast and have a shop, I'm going to make more money. But if you're going to hate making 100 coffees a day, an hour, whatever, then what's the point of waking up and go, oh, I gotta make all these coffees.
But yeah, that's the thing, is that, and it takes a while. Like, it took me maybe 5 or 6 years of actually being in the industry to really understand what I wanted to do. Like, I was traveling through Europe. I knew how to make coffee. I was okay at it. Like, it wasn't necessarily like oh, I want to do this career. It wasn't literally until I really spent time with green coffee that really, you know, sort of piqued my interest in. That's what I want to focus on. But, you know, if you are a very creative person, you know, you can do bag designs for coffee roasters, or labeling, you know, digital, like your niche could be graphic designing for coffee roasters. So you're right, like, the spectrum is not just I need to own a cafe or a roastery. It's, you know, I could be you know, there's not enough of in Australia, roasting techs. It is so hard if you have an issue with your roaster to get someone to help you or fix you. You know, learn that. You know, if you're very good with your hands. You know, I'm pretty shit with that kind of stuff, but you know, someone could capitalize on that really well.
1000%. I was speaking to, well, I mean, we're not going to, well, fuck it. I was speaking to to Aaron from Wood & Co. Big shout out to Aaron. Love what he does in Brunswick. And you know, he has that one person that can fix the one problem with his roaster. Like you said, it's not easy. And I think it's extremely important to just have an understanding of what you really like, what you really enjoy, whether it's the people, whether it's greens, whether it's origin. And that's a good starting point. And like you said, I think it's crucial to taste. But tasting is not just coffee. Taste what it means to work double shifts. Taste what it means to stay in front of a sample roaster all day. Taste what it means to go to origin and be on the back of a horse rather than a comfortable private jet. Like, taste the dirt of being a sales rep on the road. It's difficult. Taste the parts of that passion that you like, and then you can narrow it down, navigate that channel. And at your job interview, unless it's your own business, that will pop out. Like, it will explode. The person in front of you, like, wow, this guy loves fixing roasters, designing bags. I want to work with this person. 1000%.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but they, you know, they tried, or they looked for it. You know, it's not a simple answer. Like, I didn't think 12, 13 years ago, whatever, that I would be still doing this at all. I was going to join the army and be a soldier. I'm glad I'm not, but
gosh, you would have drunk lots of instant coffee if you did.
Yes, a lot of really bad coffee. I've still drunk a lot of bad coffee in my life, but not a lot of instant. Yeah, so I think, like, if they God, give it a go, but figure out what it is you want to give it a go at.
Yeah. And look, usually at this stage I ask, what's your passion? I think your passion is quite being pinpointed in terms of people, grains, and what you do. I suppose, without putting you on the spot, but let's think macro. I like macro. You know, let's play for a minute. What would be the most ideal for yourself in your sphere, in terms of like your own personal coffee mission, your own personal career development, and the biggest dream within coffee?
Biggest dream within coffee would be to really help, I guess, some of our neighboring countries get a little bit more recognition for their coffee production. So, I mean, it's very difficult in terms of political scales in Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, but I guess my dream would be able to have some sort of outlet where I could maybe help, you know, sort of promote these coffees here in Australia or whatnot, or you know, any kind of coffee person's dream, maybe one day to have a farm, not as to be a full-time farmer, but maybe as, you know, a hobby farm, if I ever get into the position where that's possible. And that's, I guess, that would be the dream. Whether or not it's a reality, I don't know. But I would love to see that happen.
Well, I think I got encouraging words for you in terms of Indonesia, especially because one of the people who views regularly these episodes, Bianca, she's only 16 and she roasted 2 amazing Indonesian single origin. One, I remember the name, one Gallo, and for someone who's 16, roasting that on an espresso profile, and I made it into a filter with the AeroPress, it was delicious. So I think that I got asked a question today from a business meeting that I had, and it was like, what do you think millennials are going to bring to the industry? Because, you know, we have such a stereotype of looking down at young people, but I'm really opposite to that. I think millennials will bring some freshness, some ideas. Like, the industry's being stagnated in terms of, even, you know, they might start competing at a younger age, start roasting at a younger age, start slinging lattes at a younger age. Let's just look at the evolution of latte art, for instance. But I think that hopefully this new wave of people will help that mission too, get more involved. I mean, Indonesia is the biggest country that follows this page. It just tells how much they love the coffee.
I think the Asian market in general is extremely fascinating. I mean, if I was a semi-successful roaster here in Australia, my focus would not be here; it would be Asia, because there's billions of people and a burgeoning economy. And yeah, I think that the younger generations are definitely the ones that are going to keep us on our toes. And just I saw someone tuning in, Josh. He's he's about 19 now. He has been roasting for 4 or 5 years already.
Big shout out.
Yeah, he's got 4 or 5 years of experience. And he's 19 years old. So
it's incredible.
They're definitely going to give us a good swift kick up the arse, but they also care about things that people that were in other generations didn't care about. So they are going to probably push us in a really good direction.
Yeah, and I think that's combined with what you said, and I think we give for granted where we are, where we live, where we can literally be so picky on where we drink coffee, especially in Melbourne and Sydney. But all these people, the eyes are on us. So I think you're right. Roasters should also put focus into Asia in terms of even, e-commerce is going to be huge in the next 18 to 36 months due to people got used now to change their behavior, right? I've said this many times on the streams. So I think people will look at what kind of coffee to buy. And I think, Australian roasters should put focus on their e-commerce as well to target those Asian countries, because they're going to be looking at, okay, what does a Melbourne coffee roaster taste like? I mean, let's look at Gardelli, for example. I was talking to Rubens, and 95% of his customers are outside of Italy.
Yeah, I mean, Rubens coffees are on a next level for, his coffees are amazing. And I think I have been to Italy and I understand the culture there. He just wouldn't be able to, wholesale that the way that he can, but he's so smart with it that he has, he's
correct.
Capitalized on everyone else.
Correct. He's capitalizing on his passion, which we go back to where we were, 100%. I think he's done a fantastic job. Speaking of which, in terms of coffee,
a good roaster.
oh yeah, and a good guy. He got me on to watch The Last Dance actually on Netflix. Good show. But which it gets to one of the toughest questions. What would you like to see in the future of coffee?
What would I like to see? If I could, and I don't know how, I'd really like to see us kind of try and get away from the instant coffee market, because the instant coffee market still contributes to around about 50% of all coffee sales within Australia, 80% within the United Kingdom. And it's these kind of massive industrial companies that are trading in futures and C market and stuff, and really having a big input into the cost of coffee. So if we could somehow try to get the Australian mindset away from it, as much as we can, it will hopefully elevate the coffee that we're buying in Australia. It won't fix the world's issue, but it will hopefully fix some of the issues that we face here in Australia. But I mean, I'd also like to see roasters not offer the kitchen sink to everyone.
Well, I think we're gonna see more. I think we're gonna see first people dropping instant coffee than what you just said, unfortunately. Just until there's some regulation, that's gonna happen. Unfortunately, of course, but I hope for both of them to be coming to the party, the things that you just said. I think the instant coffee is an interesting one, because obviously we all have seen different coffee brands around the world, especially Australia and New Zealand, without drop names, trying to do specialty grade instant coffee or tea bag like, which is interesting. I think the power goes back to the experience. How fun is this with wine? We all, in Australia not as much, but when it's cork, we all smell the cork once we open the bottle, isn't it? Because we learned that through the experience.
Yeah.
So we still missed a couple of links on when people make the instant coffee to miss the experience that they get from M&A, AeroPress, or something else. So I think experience, price, and overall quality will help. And we got a question from barista Shane. Thanks for the question, Shane. Does that mean relationship instant coffee needs to come into the spotlight?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like some of the, the specialty roasters that are doing instant, they're doing the best job they can, but to produce instant is extremely expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So until we can maybe catch up in technology or cost wise, people will still go buy the Nescafe or the Kenco or whatever from the shop because, depending on who you buy it from, those instant sachets cost anywhere from sort of $2 to $4 for one instant coffee, where I could go to a cafe. Or I can buy $2 to $4 for a tin of instant coffee from your supermarket. So when we can catch up on the cost way and people can bulk batch make it effectively, cost effectively, and kind of transition that away, I think the relationship instant coffee would be fantastic. But I think we're just probably a few years away from being able to achieve that.
Yeah, I like that answer that you just gave about just before when I asked you what you like to see in coffee, because nobody has mentioned instant in 36 or 37 episodes, and I think it's very relevant. I think back home, I mean, look, it's pre-ground and it's horrible and it's into a mocha pot, but I never seen like your staple instant coffee in Australia, something I've experienced only here, even though we have it back home too. But I like that. We didn't talk about instant in so many times, and I think it's relevant. And I think that the online world can cater for that. And I think that in a weird way, without getting bashed by the audience, even the big guys who are the commercial, the big chains doing barista-like coffee, at least they're kind of drawing what coffee should be, and they got the power, advertising power, to go and say, hey, this is what coffee should taste like. Then there's a whole issues around the fact that they charge $1 and doing this and that. I get that, but I think that's also good. Looking at the glass half full, the big guys to promote barista-made coffee.
Well, they have as you said, they have the challenge in the market and the platform to promote that. And we're lucky enough here that most people kind of appreciate that. My old man loves the latte. Like whenever I see him, we'll go to a really awesome coffee shop, whatever, but he's on the road a lot for work, and he'll unfortunately still get a 7-Eleven, $1, $2 coffee. So there is the appreciation, but they, the bigger ones, they definitely have the power to change it.
Or there could be room for people listening or for someone out there in the world to create something that hasn't been created to facilitate a new way to brew, a new way to produce a cup of coffee that it's going to be viable for people on the road. I mean, until only a few years back, we couldn't do what we're doing now. There was no AeroPress, there was no French press at some stage, there was no. So hopefully, maybe that's the next challenge. Maybe someone to find a way to fight the instant coffee market. I couldn't agree more. And I think education is going to play a big role, but it's how it's done. Education. It has to be quick. It has to be accessible. It has to be fun. It has to be through social media, without making it overcomplicated and without putting a barrier between us and consumers, where they're gonna be like, oh, that's a hipster fancy coffee. Fuck that.
Yeah. They need to make it approachable. Coffee should always be approachable. And I have an issue with any kind of person that makes it unapproachable. But they do need to make it accessible and approachable to capture the market. That's not us, because we are not.
You can still enjoy playing football without being Ronaldo, going back to the football coffee relevant. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can have the full-on, people with all the fancy equipment, all the fancy things making their coffee. That's okay. But you can also have more basic, accessible. We were talking about tasting notes recently, and I really want to hurry because it's only 4 minutes left. And it was very interesting because I was talking about it with Hugh on how complex we're making it is all tasting notes. And I think we should have beginner level tasting notes, mid, and advanced. Because if you give someone who just started on drinking filter coffee and you start talking about Coca-Cola bourbon with a hint of Feijoa tasting coffee, you're scaring the fuck out of them.
Yeah,
right?
I couldn't agree more. Making that language, that barrier is so important. I used to work for a roaster who would write things like, grandmother's Granny Smith apple pie, and I'm like, no one's tasted your fucking grandmother's Granny Smith apple pie. Like, if you have green apple, brown sugar, berries, it's an easy, approachable language, and people go, oh, cool. And then yes, when we get into the higher end stuff, you can have a little more information into what kind of berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, whatever. But
Correct.
yeah, whenever I used to sell roasted coffee, retail bags, I'd say, yeah, it's sweet, chocolatey, nutty, and they'd be like, thank you, take it back home.
I think that's fantastic. I think that we should cut back. And look, I get it. It's a marketing exercise. I get it. It's an attraction. I get it. It plays a role in looking cool. But I think it looks cooler if the consumer at the end tastes it, reads it, and is like, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Instead of, because I've heard this question many times, oh, do you put blueberries in your cold brew because you're saying it tastes like blueberries? And you're like, no, it's this, we get to this with the wheel of flavor, and you start explaining. So I think I'm more approachable even in the terminology for the entry level, because it's like if I walked in a studio of karate and fight against a black belt. How the fuck am I supposed to get karate? Like, let's be real. Anyway, we're approaching the tail end, and we know that's cutthroat here on Instagram. What's next on David's Planet? And before you answer, thank you for hopping on. I really appreciate it. I think this conversation was so diverse and so insightful compared to all the others. And I really hope that a lot of people will tune in later to rewatch an IGTV, YouTube, podcast, and whatnot, because I think there's a lot of value. But what's next in your planet? And you got probably about 90 seconds.
Well, firstly, cheers for having me. It's a lot of fun. I guess next on my planet is, in my immediate planet is I've only recently relocated to Adelaide, South Australia, literally 2 days before the borders shut. So with COVID kind of, or not COVID, I should say, with the restrictions changing, getting a chance to kind of really enjoy the city a little bit more. I guess the sort of the cafes, the roasters, the whatever. And then just try and focus on trying to get a little bit healthy again. I've sort of let myself go a little bit.
That's okay.
And then, yeah, I guess potentially think about coffee competition if it's ever going to happen. But maybe,
hopefully soon.
I'm more of a, cliche, almost a day-by-day kind of person. I do appreciate the things that I have right now, and I want to make sure that I keep that going, and I want to
Nothing wrong with that.
Sort of just spend some time with my family, my friends, and my loved ones, and
that's fantastic. And I think you answer very well in terms of, I think those are very essential things. Essential has been such a buzzword around this time, and I think those are very essential things, and I think you will. And look, I really hope that the next time you pop up in Melbourne, we'll catch up for a brew. Maybe it's not just for comp, but if you ever come in Melbourne, hit me up.
Yeah, I mean, my head office is still in Melbourne. I'll be there whenever I'm allowed to cross the border without being quarantined, really.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah, me too, actually. I've still got some stuff I need to pick up. But yeah, it'd be great to catch up.
Look, David, thank you so much for hopping on. Thanks for giving us your time. It was good fun. Maybe we should do this again in a month or two to see where you're at. And yeah, man, thank you again for popping in. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Look after yourself.
You too, man. There you have it, guys. We got 20 seconds left from this cutthroat timer from Instagram. Big shout out. Barista Shane, sorry for not answering your last question. Thank you for all the amazing questions that you sent through. Mila, Ayob, Nick, And all the people who are still here, Tanti, you all mean the word to me. So hopefully we'll see you soon.